Hi, this is Mark. Congratulations. You have found this amazingly awesome show. Chances are you're listening to it right now on whether it's iTunes or Stitcher Radio or some other mobile app that allows you to stream this amazingly awesome show to your ear holes. And I can't stress how awesomely amazing this show really is. But did you know that you can also catch the latest episode of this show on the Tangibound Network? That's right. Go check out tangiboundnetwork.com. You can look them up and you can listen to it right there. It's even mobile friendly. What more could you ask for? Which means you can pull it up on your iPhone or your Android, even your Windows phone. Yeah, who has one of those? But still, point remains, you can do it. You can do it. Check it out, tangiboundnetwork.com. Listen to this show, the latest episode, every time. Check it out.
Life sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to The Crazy Life, everyone. My name is Jen. I am your hostess for the evening, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts, Brian and Heno. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hey, yo.
Hey, yo.
Yo.
This is my new deep voice.
No, I was actually, it's a wrestling reference. A guy was known as Razor Ramon.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, when he did his promos, he'd always be like, hey, yo.
Hey,
yeah.
Oh.
So.
Nice. That was before my wrestling watching time of my life.
Yeah, that was back when I was
past mine.
I would say it was back when we were little childrens. So
I see. Yes, I was late 90s.
Yeah.
Early 2000s.
Yeah,
is when I watched.
He was like during the time you were watching, he was actually with WCW as Scott Hall.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Scott Hall sounds much more
Right.
familiar, although Razor Ramon sounds familiar as well.
Right. But anyway.
Anyways, we derailed within the first 5 seconds of the show. Sweet.
They managed to get wrestling into the beginning of the Salty Language podcast all the time.
I
and
do.
Now he's infecting the crazy life.
So true.
Cannot control the man.
Yeah. And it's never planned. Not yet, not for 60 days, roughly. Royal Rumble just happened. But anyway, moving on. I don't want this to turn into, the squared circle life or whatever. My upcoming wrestling podcast.
That's great.
Yeah.
Squared circle life?
I just making nothing up.
Okay. Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we'll continue. So it's been a week. So how's everybody been? I went first last time, so I can't go first again. Who's going to go first?
Nah, she's got us down to the technicality, Heno. She's been here 2 weeks in a row.
That's true.
2 weeks in a row. 2 weeks.
When does she get the Iron Man award?
Sorry, I was just going to say she's throwing down the word consistency already.
Yeah.
Trying here.
It's true.
The Iron Woman Award.
Yeah.
I earned February, and I've only missed one for the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
Hey, mine's easy. Deathly ill.
Awesome.
So,
man,
what's your win for the week?
Not dying.
Well, yeah. I'm glad that I chose flexible. You have to be flexible last week because I had to be very flexible with, like, oh man, it was so bad. Like, I woke up Friday and I was just like, I feel like hell. Like, what happened? So I was like, well, there's no way I'm going to go skiing. I mean, it's just
you could have
not happened. So
you could have went.
You know what? Actually, I have gone before, like feeling like that. But you pay for it later.
Yeah, that's a really bad idea.
Yeah. So I chose not to. And
do that.
Yeah, and I actually got some stuff done that morning. It's not like I did nothing all weekend. I mean, on Saturday I put in a radon system at my house, and I mean, I did things, but I was then the rest of the time was just couch locked. And then you get to that point where your brain just doesn't even function, and it was like, yeah, I got up on Sunday. It's like, okay, go to work. So luckily all week I've have had interior stuff to do. So I was just doing drywall work and that kind of stuff. But I just, what night was it? It was Monday night. I fell asleep on the couch at like 6:30. And that just does. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I used to nursing a hangover, but
yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but my big thing is I'm going to California tomorrow, and my main thing is if I have anything resembling a sinus infection getting into a plane, oh
geez, I can't imagine.
No, thank you. Yeah. So it's been like 24 hours a day, Mucinex and decongestants and everything.
Right.
Sure.
So yeah, I am feeling better, but it was like one of those things where it's like I had reasonable aspirations for the weekend, and not that things got done that needed to get done, and I got rid of an amplifier, which was awesome. Somebody bought that. And this is hilarious. So the FedEx that I can take stuff to is here in Haley, but their hours are completely do not work for me at all. It's like they open at 9. I'm already at work. They close at 4:30. I'm not home yet.
Right.
So I send Sharon in with all the packages all the time. So this package was huge. I mean, it was a big heavy metal guitar amp thing, and I packed it up really well. Like I spent like 2 hours putting this thing together, and I put it into the back of Sharon's car with a hand truck because she was going to need it.
Oh yeah, okay,
and the lady at FedEx was like, "I love your hand truck, and your taping job is always so great." And she starts complimenting Sharon on how I package things. So there's my win for the week.
Yeah.
Nice. You're stellar at packaging.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
No,
I think I think I should be surviving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it was. I think there's. I think part of like my step away from Facebook has been, because we had an election year. I was really that's when I allow myself to be into politics, and it's been a little bit like withdrawal symptoms. Because I got used to it. I got used to being active again. And it was something I did when I moved up here, is because I was able to, I can turn things off up here.
Yeah.
We don't have radio stations. It's literally my choice if I want to dive into it.
Yeah.
And so there were a couple of times where I was just like, I was like, I want to know what's going on. And it was like, no. You don't need to know what's going on. Right.
Well, you were kind of fighting the FOMO that we talked about on a previous episode a little bit.
Truly. Yeah. If you haven't done the fear of missing out Crazy Life episode, go check it out. It was, it was kind of like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, no, I don't need to. And what am I going to do this weekend? I'm actually going to go see people and my family. And, what's really going to be cool is my sister had told my mom that she was really – so my parents – I'm arriving tomorrow. I leave tomorrow morning, and I'll be in Bay Area sometime. Well, everyone that's listening to this, it's already done. but I'll be getting in around when they're having a luncheon. My parents are. So my sister said she'd come pick me up, that she's going to block some time out of her day and come pick me up. So I was like, oh, that's really nice of her. And it turns out she's really excited to see me and she wants to go out and have lunch and talk. And this is really good. I'm really looking forward to this because, you know, my parents' lives are changing.
Yeah.
Which means family needs to change with it. Yes. There are things that need to happen. These things are better when they're communicated than not communicated.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, and I'm just gonna jump way ahead, and this is my plan for this weekend. Not my plan, but my goal is just to keep a very open mind. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what happens, is to just be open minded. Once again, just to be flexible.
Yep.
To be in the moment. And to approach anything that goes on is to pull myself out of the conversations and to put love and compassion in.
Yeah.
And patience or whatever it is.
Right. And
to literally, yeah.
That's the best plan. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's a big change for me. Mm-hmm. That that's even something I want to endeavor, you know, that this is an endeavor of mine. I've always had that little bit of me that well, I've always been very in a room. I instantly figure out who's in charge and who's not. Mm-hmm. And if somebody needs to be in charge, I have no problem filling it in.
Yeah.
I have no problem taking over, you know, taking control of the situation. And I also have no problem stepping back and going, okay, yeah. That's I'll be the follower here. I've always been very malleable in that regard. But in my family, I can be a bit of a bully in a way, not so much in a mean way, but in a
I totally
express my will.
Yeah,
I guess
I totally get you. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I want to just be of service to everybody else this weekend in my attitude. And I really think that that's going to allow me to get the most out of every moment.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
That's awesome.
It is, you know, and it always helps when you go into anything, you know, with that kind of thing, especially when you don't know, what you're walking into necessarily, you know, to some extent. And, you know,
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. So it helps if you go in that way versus going in with, you know, well, it's going to go this way, and then I'm going to this, and then you know, and
yeah,
and I came all the way out here, and
yeah,
yeah. You want to go in with a positive, hopeful heart because you don't want to go in with trepidation or any type of fear because you'll be coloring situations that don't even exist.
Yeah,
exactly.
You gotta, be very open-minded. So that's
exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's for me. To feel that it's kind of funny to say this, but my whole life I've had a lot of thoughts. I've had a lot of ideas. I've had a lot of dreams and desires for how I want the world to see me. Mm-hmm. That's part of being a people pleaser.
Yeah.
But I never really believed it. It's like I always knew I was that I was a bit of an actor. Mm. On the stage and also trying to play director and whatever else you want to throw in there.
Yeah.
And I actually like to actually have my feelings be believable to myself and possible is just, I'm so grateful for that. And it's a miracle for me because I have, it's a weird thing to feel like that I'm full of crap, basically. But to put on a good game.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, no wonder I drank.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, no wonder I hid in substance abuse and other abuse, whatever, you name it. If it was an escape, I jumped on that train.
Right.
So to actually say, okay, I'm looking forward to going home and I'm going to be open-minded and just see how I can be useful. And I go, and wow, I really mean that.
Yeah.
That feels good.
Right.
that feels good. That's why, that's why I can say I'm a recovered alcoholic today.
Right.
Because this attitude I have today is going to make it so much more possible that I don't drink tomorrow.
Yep. You're
That's
absolutely
awesome.
right. Yeah. Because you're not looking for something to fill the void anymore. You've found more wholesome things to fill the void. It's similar to eating, fast food versus eating, real food, basically. It's like, the other fills your belly, but it doesn't nourish you the same as real food or other food does, so it's, you're finding things that nourish you instead of the quick fix or whatever now. So,
and knowing that I'm not going to have to make up for today, tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's no payback this way to me. There's no, it doesn't come back around on me anymore. That's like all those little habits that come with behavioral problems, the little lies and the making things grander than they really are, or, just being a little bit mean or whatever. Those were all things that came back around on me eventually.
Yep.
And I think when I know for myself, when I'm in that place, there's this constant level of fear.
Yeah.
Of, when am I going to get found out? When is it going to hit the fan?
Right.
And to go through life this way, which is, I don't worry about it anymore.
Right.
I don't, it's like, I just tell the truth.
Right.
Wow. When you do that, you don't have to worry about who found out if you lied.
Yeah.
Because you didn't.
Crazy. Crazy how that works.
Wow. What
isn't
a
it?
concept.
If you're overreacting or underreacting,
Yeah.
or is the reaction the correct reaction to have, doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's my favorite phrase is to be the right size for the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that idea.
Yeah.
It's, because that's something I never knew how to do. I was always the wrong size.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, next.
Awesome. How about you, Brian?
I'm pretty good. I finally made the calls I've been putting off. I got that sorted out. Yeah.
Awesome.
I actually was scheduled for a doctor's appointment today, and then I got a phone call from them saying that they don't think the doctor I've seen the last couple times is actually covered by my insurance. And they were like, if that's the case, they said they will, like, I won't owe any money, but I have to see a different doctor because I guess he left this place for a little while, went to another place. And since he's come back, they basically have to, get the paperwork lined up.
Oh.
So down the road, I may be able to see him again and get it covered. But for now, until something is 100%, they're not, because they aren't going to just let me keep seeing him if they're not going to get paid for it, which I understand, but it's their mistake, not mine. So, and they owned it. So that's fine. Because when she's telling me this, the first thing I thought of is I've seen him twice now. They better not bill me for this because that isn't my fault.
That's cool that they're owning that.
Yeah. So because every doctor there pretty much takes my insurance, or so I thought, but anyway. But, so I had to reschedule that. That was, not a big deal, but it was like an hour before my appointment that they called me. So, a little stressful there because, it's just like, even though it was pretty much just a follow-up today, it wasn't anything new or, I wasn't going for any real reason other than, he upped my antidepressant last time. This was basically to make sure everything was going well, or okay. But it's still, when stuff gets canceled kind of last minute on you like that, it's hard to deal with it to some extent. But then, I quickly get that wash of relief. Because anytime something falls through, it's amazing how much of a relief it is. And it sucks, because that really isn't how it should be, but it's still there, but, so that's no big deal. It's just whatever, that's just one of those things that, it hits you, you brush it off your shoulder, no worries. But, boy, I have had some awful migraines since last week, though. Probably 4 days worth of migraines. And I mean, the one I had yesterday going into Monday was brutal. It was one of the worst ones maybe I've ever had. And I think it felt like basically like my whole head was hurting. I think it was kind of a migraine sinus mix because we had a weather front go through. So I think I was kind of getting, the old 1-2 punch there. But, I was supposed to go out with Tony and his wife to pub trivia on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
And I texted Jeannie and was like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. My head is just killing me. So, which stunk because I was really looking forward to it. But, a bar is probably not the right place to be when your head's killing you like that. Because I'm not going to be able to concentrate, which will frustrate me. Drinking's not going to help. It might help dull the pain, but in the long run, it's not going to help. It's going to make it worse, And then if there's any noise in the place, that's going to add to it too. So it's the only part that would probably be beneficial is most bars are kind of dark, But, yeah. So, yeah, that's been.
What's our week for illnesses?
Yeah. So today I'm congested, but otherwise I feel pretty good today. So, luckily the migraine went away last night about 11 o'clock and yeah, oof. Yeah. Anyway, no fun there, but whatever. Real quick, I want to thank, a few people for, sending in comments about the show, and letting us know, how they feel about it, that they liked it. Or whatever. So, it means a lot to us. And I've shared them with Henno and Jen. And, it means a ton to us when we hear that kind of stuff. Cause it just confirms that we're on the right path. That this isn't just us beating our gums for no reason. Even though realistically it's good for the three of us. So even if that's all it was, it would still be worth doing,
Yeah, it does. I will say it's very heartwarming and touching when we hear from people and how the show affects you.
Yeah. And, my win for the week was, I pushed myself out of a comfort zone a little bit. I did two things. One actually feels like a recession, but I don't think it is. And one is the first thing is that I've basically stayed off of dating sites for the last 2 weeks. And because I think it's just doing me harm in the confidence department because I'm not getting any attention. So I think for the moment I am just like, whatever, if something happens, but I'm not, it's one of those times where I kind of feel like pushing an agenda just wasn't getting me anywhere, so, pull back, regroup and, see where life goes from here. But, the other is, I submitted one of the blogs that I've previously written, to a website called The Mighty, which is actually where our article for tonight's topic is from. And they have a lot of people who have mental illnesses and different stuff that write blogs basically like, hey, this is what I'm going through kind of a thing. So I submitted, my one about, being in a three-way, like if someone were to date me, how it would basically be a three-way relationship with my depression and, how they have to share me essentially. And, so I submitted that and, I kind of, either way, I've got some topics for blogs and I think, really kind of pushing myself toward doing more of those again.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, that's an amazing, honest statement.
Well, yeah, and to be willing, I mean, you've already put that out there for the world in your blog, but to be willing to submit it and potentially face rejection on it.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
I mean, I love how you write, and I think you have amazing blogs, but, for you to put yourself out there like that, that's huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge.
I figured that, and that site, they have a cool thing where you can try to submit, each week they kind of have hey, we're looking for stuff with this. So yeah. I might start looking at that more often to see if any of their topics, cause you're probably more likely to get picked if you throw something in off of what they're looking for. So
Mm-hmm.
I might start kind of looking that way and, try to do that, because I've had quite a few people say that they really appreciate how I approach,
Mm-hmm.
the blogs. So I think that's what I, figured I'd give it a try, because, it's one of those, like you said, it's putting myself out there for rejection, but in my head, it is, obviously, but at the same time, that blog's already out there. It's one of my most read blogs. So
Mm-hmm.
It's already a success to me, because I've had really good feedback on it about how people, are like, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's absolutely true. You do.
And be proud of your confidence. That takes a lot of confidence to be able to put yourself out there like that and to take some chances.
Yeah.
Yep. That's awesome. It's huge steps for you.
Yeah. So, yeah. So like I said, that's my win for the week right there, obviously.
Wonderful.
Yep. That and my headache going away.
Yay!
Oh boy. I'm not lying. Last night I was considering going to the emergency room. It was getting so bad.
It was that bad.
At one point I was crying. It hurt so bad.
Oh my god.
And most of the time they're not that bad. That's one of the worst ones I've ever had. So, yeah. But
yikes.
yeah.
Well, my week's been good. It's been filled with house stuff and things along those lines.
Mm.
I'm struggling a bit at work. Having some communication difficulties,
Right.
shall we say, with some people. So, and I'm finding myself falling into some bad habits that I used to have. So I'm really trying hard to rise above that. I have a tendency, because of the bipolar, to take things and blow them out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I go either too extreme one way or another. Go figure, bipolar.
Yeah.
I go to one polar or the other.
Yeah.
But, so I'm finding myself doing this teeter-totter a lot. So I'm really having to focus in, and it's pretty much coming to crunch time. I need to be honest with myself and determine, it's like, okay, am I going to do the work, or am I going to go back to the doctor and ask for help?
Well,
so those are my two options.
I will say, let's not gloss over the fact that going to the doctor is doing the work.
Yes.
It's part of doing the work. Yes. Because it's part of the path toward, helping yourself there. So, yeah. Absolutely. I just don't, I want to make sure you're not like looking at one as a positive thing and the other as, cause it kind of felt that way. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, I was just meaning it more along the lines of, am I, at this point in my life, am I able to do the work that I need to do on my own?
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I get
it. I think it's better worded. It's like, am I able to do this work on my own, or am I going to need to ask for some additional assistance?
Right.
I've been fighting it for a while. I'm really thinking I can do it on my own, but my support system is starting to argue with me. Like, maybe not. So
yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how this goes.
Well, there is something. There is something else. Is that like when you go see the psychiatrist, their job is to ask you questions, and then when you tell them stuff, for them to analyze basically whether you need more help or not. You know? So don't discount that as, because you could go in there, he could say, hey, I think you need to go on this or more medicine, and you can say, nah, I'm good. I'm going to try doing this on my own. But it's kind of, just go get an estimate, basically.
Right.
Go get an estimate on your mental health, and then,
Right. Kick the tires a little bit, check the oil.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. And it should be looked at in the same way. It's a maintenance for your mental health. It really is. You're
right.
And it's someone that is completely outside. So if you go in and you're honest with the person, which I know you will be, I'm just in general.
Yeah.
That's a massive key, to anyone listening. If you go to your doctor, be honest. Don't hold back. Don't overshare necessarily, but, give them enough information to make a good decision. But, like you said, let them kick the tires, check the oil and
fluid
wiper
levels.
fluid, and yeah.
So, and it's tough, and I don't know why I fight it as much as I do. Part of it is the setting an appointment and going to an appointment, and the whole thing is hard. Nobody likes doing it, and it's extra hard when you have mental illness because it goes against the fiber of the disease.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes against everything that your brain is telling you to do. And, it's tough to fight those feelings, those urges that tell you like, nah, you're fine.
Yeah.
Oh, you got this. You can handle this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's just a moment. Oh, that's just outside stressors working on you.
You're like, oh, it's just a moment. It'll pass. And then you realize you've said that to yourself for like 10 days in a row, And
yeah. Or 3-4 months.
Yeah. It's like, let me do some maths real quick.
Yes.
Problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Your support system is starting to say they hear the same story over and over.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
Right.
I get it. So,
like, no, it's different this time.
Yeah. Oh, yes. No. This time's different. It's because of this. It's because of that.
Yeah. Like, that's what you told me the last 5 times.
Before.
Mm-hmm. Like, there's always going to be stressors. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I'm still on the fence. I'm not committing to anything as of yet. I know I need to. Committing to focusing on it and really taking some serious introspective looks on things.
Yeah.
And seeing how things are going. Because I'm getting very one way or another, and I'm starting to overanalyze, and I'm starting to fall into a lot of the bad behaviors that I used to do.
You mean the things that are found on the Distorted Thinking worksheet?
Yes! Thank you for mentioning that. So
he gets it in.
Yep.
There you go, folks. It's a if we keep saying it, it's a journey.
Yep.
You're going to have your ups, you're going to have your downs. It's a journey, and it's a continuous battle. There is no quit.
Yep.
So, with that,
well, what was your win for the week?
My win for the week is recognizing I was in a situation where my day started out bad, and it was increasingly getting worse, and I was contributing to it getting worse.
Wait, what?
I recognize
that. No one ever does that.
I recognized the fact that my behavior was not making things better, that my behavior was making it worse, and that I could not control the situation, but I could control my behavior.
Nice.
So I hit 11 o'clock a.m. I made the determination that I am going to have a good day today. I don't care what happened this morning. I am going to have a good day today, and that is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a fairly good day that point forward.
I read something one time where they mentioned that to improve people's moods, that if you have like a bad start to the day, to basically after your lunch to try to get in the mindset of that you're basically going in for a new day at that point. To try to just flush the first part of the day and say, this is going to be a good day. Basically, right now is going to be good moving forward. So. Yeah, that makes sense. And you're right. That's a total win though, because so many times we wouldn't blame ourselves. We wouldn't take any responsibility for that. We would just blame everything else. Like, well, the coffee machine was broke, so I'm cranky because I didn't get my coffee. And then this guy said something to me, and I saw the way she looked at me, and I know what she's talking about, or she's thinking. And then there was the meeting, and they didn't like my idea. Well, they didn't say they didn't like my idea, but I could tell. And then, anyway.
Yep.
And I'm not exaggerating. That is literally, you can run through someone's day like that. I've been there. Yep. And every bit of what I just said essentially is some form of distorted thinking.
Yeah.
Every bit of it.
And I recognized it.
Yeah. which is
as
great.
I was in the moment, I was able to recognize it when I was in the moment, and and make that determination, say no, I'm not doing this.
Right, and I'm
not going to do
great.
this behavior.
Yeah.
So
good.
Yeah. So that's good. And I know I've got my highlights, and those the key things to remember.
Mm-hmm.
That every week you have your highlights, and you can have some lowlights sometimes, but play the highlights and keep playing the highlights over and over again.
Yep.
So with that being said, I think it's time for us to go on to our topic of the day.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting topic, and it directly relates to mental illness, but I also think that it also can relate to being in recovery big time. We've talked about it before, and it's coming out. It's basically, is coming out as a person with mental illness ever a good idea? Is there ever a good time to admit you've got a mental disorder? And where? Should you do it in person, on Facebook, on a blog? So we've talked about it in the dating setting a bit. Mm-hmm. We talked about it with a guest, with Clint, when he was a guest with us. But I think it's really important that we kind of touch on it again, because it's been a little while.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
For dating sites?
Is there ever a good time for it?
Oh, okay. You just mean in general. Okay.
Yes, in general.
Yeah, because, like we kind of talked before we started recording, the nature of the beast for depression, at least, is, isolate, keep it to yourself, stay quiet. That's how you strengthen the monster, Mm-hmm. And if you admit it, first of all, admitting it to yourself, and then admitting it to others or telling others, it takes the isolation part of it out of it, because you're talking with others about it. And again, that's kind of where I got, which was I had kept mine to myself for years, to the point that I suffered with it through junior high and through high school, and neither of my parents knew. And it wasn't because my parents weren't involved in my life or didn't care or anything like that. It's because around them, I put on a face, and then when I got into my room where I was by myself, then, the depression took over, and kind of like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of situation, almost. And, once I started talking about it, it's instead of trying to control situations and what are other people going to think, and again, distorted thinking, once I started, as we've talked about on here, once you start to let go a little bit, you realize how much more control you have and how freeing it is. I've had various people tell me how, I'm brave for talking about my depression and the lows of it and stuff, that I'm not holding back and whatnot. And to me, it doesn't feel brave. It just feels like finally it's just pouring out of me because I've kept it in for so long, Yeah. So to me, it's a relief, and it helps immensely to come on here each week and talk to you guys about it. And not just to talk to you two, but we're putting this out there to where anybody can download this, anyone can listen to me talk about my lows and my highs and whatnot, it's out there. And to me, it's more of an exciting prospect at this point than a scary one or a bad experience. And I think, it gets into that in the article here, so I won't go too much further. But anyway, that's kind of my point on it.
What do you think, Hanno?
Yeah. It's kind of it's interesting when you have whatever it is that you're being quiet about. If there's usually behaviors that might make it obvious, or that would be giveaways, or, like for me, it doesn't take long for, okay, you don't drink, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And same thing, like if you have, if you just have things that you can't do, like you can't drive a car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about why I don't drive, or
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things. So for me, it just comes up so often. So I've always just been, since I know a lot of people that I don't understand. I don't understand why they do it, but I do because it's their business. It's none of my business. And why people just really hide the fact that they either see therapists or belong to groups or whatever it is, or it's always been baffling to me because I feel like, well, there's no better way for me to be able to help somebody else than if I'm out with my own problems. Because how is anyone ever going to say, well, how'd you do it, or how are you getting through this, or how if I keep it to myself,
right?
And yes, there's still stigma out there, but I guess I'm at a point where if somebody has an issue with my issue,
Yeah.
I don't want to work for you. I don't want to be friends with you. I don't want to. I'm very fortunate in that I have not had to hide.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
My work.
And I don't mean to minimize this in any way, but I think, especially in our lifetimes, being an alcoholic and saying, hey, I'm a recovering or a recovered alcoholic, I think people immediately go, you're strong, at that point kind of a thing, versus depression. People are just like, I don't get it. Like, you're sad. So what? But you do still get some of that stigma with the, well, why don't you just have one? One won't kill you, kind of a thing.
And that's an age thing too.
Yep.
Sure.
And that's what, when I have an opportunity to mentor younger people,
mm-hmm.
And I find out they're 23 or 24,
mm-hmm.
And I just sit there and I go, okay, well, if I were you, I'd be drinking. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I go, this is what I did when I was your age. I maybe go find someone that you can talk to that's been sober since they were 19.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard for me. So, and there is a lot of pressure like that. There's so much peer pressure. And what I think might be kind of interesting is there might be a flip flop here in that when people get older and you say, oh, I turned my life around. I was, whatever it was, I was, smoking too much weed, drinking, whatever the behaviors are.
Yeah.
That now this is an asset. You're strong. You've done all this kind of stuff like that. And when you're younger, people go, what are you, freaking crazy? But when people are younger and they talk about mental illnesses, I think they might get a little bit more, like, oh, I suffer from depression or blah, 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 blah. They might find other people that are more sympathetic to them versus when you become older and someone goes and they just look at you like you have a crutch, like, you're in a wheelchair or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like I wonder if there is that,
there's almost got to be, because I've seen various things saying that this generation of kids coming out of high school and junior high to high school to college age range have more instances of depression than the previous generation. And don't get me wrong, there's all sorts of factors you can go over, like TV commercials and more doctors are prescribing, and WebMD exists, and there's all these reasons you could probably maybe discount some of it, but whatever, you'd have to factor in. But it's still the idea that I think you're right, that when they become, as they age, that becomes the normal, and as a result, when they get to be our age, they aren't going to look at us 30 or 20 years older than them going, oh, he's got depression, and go, yeah, okay. They're going to be like, hey, I get it, cause they'll have been there. So I think you're probably right. And I think that's the thing. I think alcoholism probably has done some of that same thing, because there were a lot of alcoholics and stuff where it was kind of unchecked for a long time. And now going to, whatever program you go into or however you kick it is not seen as badly as it was. in those days, because in those days it's like, oh, he can't handle his drink, or whatever, it's a sign of weakness. And now it's like, no, they reached out for help, that's a good thing. They cleaned their act up, they grew up, they got their life straight, all the different terms that go with it. And I think people will kind of see mental illness that same way as it go, as it's become more and more prevalent, and people, that stigma drops of it being made up or fake, similar to alcoholism. Don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of people that think alcoholism is totally a, made up thing, and that at any time you can do whatever, and,
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not trying to minimize anything. It's just, I think you were onto something, though. I think the generation shift will make a big difference in this.
Yeah, because for me, the ideas of bipolar and all the medications, I became aware of those when I was in my early 20s, in the early 90s.
Yeah, me too. I had never
prior
heard
to that.
of,
I'd never even. Yeah.
Like,
so that means
even depression and stuff. I didn't know anybody who had depression, or I didn't know anyone who had been diagnosed with depression. Let me put it that way. They were just goths in high school. Yeah, right. Yeah,
right.
You know what I mean? Like they were those people. They were those girls and those guys.
Yeah. It's that you're absolutely right though. And now it's like, I bet if you go into high school and you look at those same kids and go, hey, how many of you were on antidepressants? I bet it's a lot of them, versus when I was in high school, it was a few of them. Again, I didn't know anyone on antidepressants. Whether they were or not, I didn't know of them being on it. You know what I mean? Now I can tell you a bunch of people I know that are on antidepressants, so it's become more normal, or really the number was always there. Essentially, it was just not talked about. Now it's being talked about, and it's a huge difference. That's why I'm kind of in support of people coming out with this and really putting it out there that you have this, because it's part of you. It's not you, but it's part of you, like Jen mentioned before we recorded. It's no different than, hey, I'm left-handed. Not everybody's left-handed. I have struggles because I'm left-handed, because the world is not geared for left-handed people, handles and all that kind of stuff, all sorts of things and products more so when I was a kid, were only geared to right-handed people. The stuff made for lefties were terrible. Like left-handed scissors were the worst. I might as well chew through the paper. They were so bad. So, you know what I mean? But and even still, being left-handed is weird. It's a small percentage of the population. But there's still things that people that are left-handed struggle with because of the way things are designed. They're designed with right-handed people in mind because that's the majority. Well,
ultimately, it's just, it's all just it's a part of you, and it's a part of the things that you have to deal with. And, and it's very difficult to keep a part of you quiet. Kind of even a little bit what Henna was saying. It's like, it becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. We may not think it does, but it does.
Yeah.
You could only hide, depression and bipolar. Like bipolar, you could only hide for so long.
Yeah.
People will call you dramatic, emotional, passionate.
Hyper.
Those are all keywords. Hyper.
Yeah.
All keywords that can be used, not all the time, but can be used for people who are bipolar. Mm-hmm. I've been called those things my entire life. And, you can't even out. You're always all over the place. Yep. All of that stuff.
Yep.
It's like always all over the place. You're up, down, here and there. I'm like, I get it. Yep. Guess what?
Yeah.
Now I have a name for it. Yay.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. That's the difference.
Now it's actually, I get a name I can say, which is a big yay. That wasn't actually a sarcastic yay, even though it sounded that way.
Yeah.
It was an actual yay that, it's awesome. I can actually say that it's bipolar. This is what part of me that makes me act the way I act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when you have no idea what it is, it's just like, I don't know why I'm that way. It's just, you're quirky.
Why can't you be this way? I don't know. Why can't you be right-handed. I don't know.
Yeah. Like I tried. I throw right-handed.
Like,
I think the hardest part I know for myself and I know other people that go through this is just this idea of the feeling of I'm closing off a certain part of the world.
yeah.
Talk about fear of missing out. When you are honest, everything's all about a search engine. It's a set of criteria. It's that difference between me writing I'm 5'8" versus I'm 5'9" in a dating, a search, because that's where they break it down.
Yep.
It's like, okay, between 5'6" and 5'8" or 5'9" and 5'11", like that. Okay, where are most women looking kind of thing? And I was very aware of that when I was, out there dating.
Yeah.
And so what do? Well, in shoes, I'm 5'9".
Right.
So, I put that down, but think about that as like, okay, so now I would have no problem writing I don't drink.
Yeah.
Right? That's not a big deal.
Right.
But what if there was a checkbox that said I suffer a mental illness?
Yeah. Now, I'll say this. If it was just generic in saying that, I would not check it. If it was a box that allowed me to, or something that allowed me to type one or something, then maybe I would, because, and maybe I would explain it in my profile a little bit or something, because I could see somebody scrolling and just seeing, oh, they have mental illness, and just, and the reason I say that is because of how it's stigmatized by the news with like, the idiots who go around and shoot up a place, and then they, oh, well, they have mental illness. Yeah. And it's like, well, they had a mental illness, and it's like, yeah, so do I, but I'm not gunning down 20 people. Just because you have mental illness does not mean you will kill people. There's a huge gap in those things. Sometimes, yes, like a Venn diagram, there will be an overlap, but most of the time, yeah, not so much. So yeah, I wouldn't. That's kind of what we talked about with Clint, which is it's really difficult because on one hand, I have depression, I have anxiety. I'm not going to be able to date someone, like my blog says, I'm not going to be able to date someone unless they can accept that. Yeah. You're going to find out really fast that I have those things, especially the anxiety. The depression comes and goes, but the anxiety's there like all the time, like I don't drive. So they're right off the bat, it's right there. And that's the thing. A lot of these sites will ask if you have a car, and I have to, and you have to check a box there. And it's like, this sucks, because when I put no, they're immediately going to go, oh, this guy doesn't even have a car. So then, and they may go into well, he doesn't drive. And I've talked with people, and from what I've gathered and read, most women seem to think, and guys probably do it too, that the reason you don't drive is because you've had an issue with the law. Like you've had DUIs or whatever. And I haven't. So they may think I'm a deadbeat when I'm not. I just have anxiety,
Right.
So, yeah, anyway.
They talk about in the article some of the questions to ask yourself if you think you're ready to go public. One, are you in a stable place of recovery?
Yeah.
I think this is a great thing to mention.
Me too.
Because you want to be in a stable place. And she even goes on to say, but looking back, I cringe at how not put together I really was. She thought she was put together and she was ready to do this, started blogging about it and stuff. There are times I wish I had had someone veto my writing privileges because I decompensated. That being said, I'm a big believer of the mantra, time heals all wounds. Because yes, I put some random, poorly put together stuff on my blog. Luckily, the world was rather forgiving of those errors.
See, the only problem I have with that is kind of like this podcast, okay? You could, 2-3 years down the road, if we're still doing this, we could probably look back and I could probably make that exact same statement about me, because I'm in the process right now, right?
Yeah.
But I think showing those poorly put together pieces and stuff shows right where you are mentally at that point. And then if your next blog gets better and better as you get better and better, I think it shows growth. And if people really are reading into that stuff, they'll notice the attitude and the mood change within the pieces going forward. You know, that's kind of the way I see this show is, you know, if you go back and listen at the beginning, I think you can see a difference in me to now, you know, and I think that's kind of part of what makes listening to this interesting, because you can feel like you're growing with us, you know? So I'm not 100% that I agree with her on that. I know what she's getting at, but I don't know if I agree with it.
Yeah, you definitely need to be in a stable place.
Oh, no. That part I 100% agree with.
So that part I think we can agree on, but you're right. The rest of it, I agree with you. I think it's important that we show ourselves flaws and all, because it goes against, again, it's a fight against the disease.
Yep.
Because the disease wants to make you believe that no one will accept you for your flaws.
Yeah.
With your flaws.
Honest being honest and raw is the way to get through to a lot of people. You know?
Yes.
There's a reason that those commercials with the Sarah McLachlan music show animals in various stages of abuse. They don't show happy puppies rolling around on the floor going, these puppies need adopting. They don't show those puppies, even though there's plenty of them out there that need adopting, perfectly cute, rolling around and barking and looking adorable. But they show you all the ones that have been mangled and not fed and you know, because they're trying to invoke sympathy, you know, and you're going to be more likely to react to it. If I'm telling people, you know, like if you read about someone's account of what they were going through when they were suicidal, it opens your head so much more than glossing over it using cute terms and, you know what I mean? Like it sells the product better just from a psychology standpoint. So that's why I said I'm very much a fan of open and raw. That's the way I try to write. And if people don't think it's refined and don't like it, I don't care, you know, because that's how I'm feeling when I wrote it. And that's what I'm trying to show people, because most people they don't feel that same way.
And I just don't see how you can, like, for me, all my growth has happened in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like, if I were to sit in 24-hour-a-day therapy or sit in 24-hour-a-day group until I reached some point of perfection, and then went out into the world to interact, I'm still going to hiccup. I'm still going to, you know, there's no, to me, there's no perfect point. Like, oh, you know, how recovered am I?
Yeah.
At what level am I recovered enough to do this? Okay, sure. I'm sure there are professionals out there that would say, no, you're not ready, or, you know, I think you are ready. But the fact of the matter is we need to interact with the real world. And that's the real classrooms out there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It's, I can sit there and study books all day long about, you know, how to get along with people.
Yep.
But I have to go out and put it into practice. And so it's a kind of, I'm with you on Brian, where it's like, you know, we have to go out, we have to try some things, we have to take some chances.
Yeah. Well, and I think sharing your failures, again, is where people identify with you, because they've experienced falling down and they want to know that it's okay to fall down, you know, and then get back up, you know, that's where all the growth is right there. And not just in like, you know, someone, I mean, you know, it's like, I've made a comment before. I love when celebrities come out and talk about mental illness, because it shows that you can be that level of successful and have overcome, and you can manage it, you know? Mm-hmm. But it's tough with some people too, because when you hear them tell the story, a lot of people will kind of discount it because they'll see them as different. Like The Rock, when he posted on his Instagram about his depression at one point, I saw a bunch of comments that were like, well, yeah, it must be, you know, easy to deal with when you have all that money. And it's like, he dealt with that when he was broke, you know, like it wasn't, he's, you know, and even if he's dealing with it now, as we talked a couple weeks ago, that doesn't necessarily make it easier, you know? I mean, it can make access to care and stuff easier, yes, but it doesn't make the internal fight any easier, you know? And, so I kind of think, and that's why I said it's like people need to see people fail and get up, because that's when you're like, you know, because again, how inspirational are the stories out there where you see someone who has a disability overcome the disability for success? or someone gets injured in the military, but they don't let that stop them from becoming a Paralympian or, you know, different, you know, type of things. And people get a lot of inspiration out of that because they're like, wow, you know, they can do that. I can do this. And I think that's where I see all of this. Now, I will say also, the one thing I will say is when she talks about being at a stable place, I think it kind of leads into the second point, which I'll mention and then we can talk about it more, which is, can you handle the trolls? And I think the easiest way to measure the first point of hers is to use the second point. If you're in a place where if you put a blog out there and someone says negative, you're immediately going to, you know, just burn it all to the ground. You're not ready to post that blog.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you can do it like me, if someone throws negativity at me, I'm bringing, like, not bring it on, but I can defend myself. I can and will defend myself, or I'll just block them. I'm in a point where I can do that because, like Heno said earlier, kind of like, if you don't want to be part of what I'm doing, get out of the way. You know, like I don't have time or room for people like that in my life. So, and I think that would be the measuring stick for me. Otherwise, I don't know. I think it's just trial by fire, you know?
Well, I think the next two kind of link right into each other is, are you ready for the possible notoriety? And does your, well, no, that's not the one I want. So are you ready for the possible notoriety? And are you okay with your name forever being linked to your disorder?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question right there.
It is.
And those are really strong questions. I mean, when I went public, I remember thinking long and hard on it, and many people in my support system didn't want me to go public.
Yeah.
And the friends and family, they were like, go for it, but don't put it on social media. Don't tell the employers. Don't tell your coworkers and stuff. And because basically their theory is once you go there is no going back. Mm-hmm. It's like once you've made the announcement, basically, there's no turning around. There's no going back. And whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be judged harshly, you're going to be judged harshly. And they didn't see the point in it.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point in opening her up and taking the risk? My response and what ultimately I decided to do is I felt that me being quiet fed my beast.
Yeah.
You know, personally, I felt that it was holding me back from being the person that I could be by being quiet. And it completely, you know, it was very, I don't want to say selfish, but very self-motivated decision. Mm-hmm. Because I knew for me to get from my recovery, for me to get where I want to be and to keep myself stable, I could no longer carry the persona that I was putting out there. I had to drop it.
Well,
I couldn't carry it anymore.
Not to mention, you know, like you said, keeping quiet feeds the beast. And also, if you keep it to yourself, you open yourself up to hearing all those words terms you described a little bit ago that you've been hearing for years because, you know, people didn't know you were bipolar. You're going to hear all of those things. Or if you get a little grouchy, you're going to start getting other words associated with you. Whereas if these people know you're bipolar ahead of time, now there's still going to be plenty of them that are, you know, ignorant. And, you know, if you happen to be mad and snap, they're going to go, oh yeah, she's being bipolar again, even though that's not how it works. You don't, you know, but, you know, there's going to be that level of that there too, of course, but, I'm with you. I think just putting it out there because, you know, like you said before, if an employer hires you knowing that you're bipolar, like it's down on paper somewhere, they better not, you know, do anything negative against you because of that. Otherwise they're violating the Americans with Disability Act.
Yes.
You know,
mental illness is a protected class, folks.
Yeah.
Do not ever, ever, ever let anyone tell you differently.
Now, important point, you have to have been diagnosed with this. You can't have gone on WebMD and done this. You have to go see a professional.
2 points. 1, medical doctor has to diagnose you.
Yes.
Second point, you have to declare it
Yep.
in the interviewing process. For it to be classified as a legal situation arises, you have to have told the employer from the very, very beginning so that they understand that you are quote unquote impaired.
Yeah.
I hate to use that word, but
Mhm.
that's the legal word for it.
Right.
I agree. That's not right. Frankie has a lot to say tonight.
I guess.
The next one is about
awesome.
employers. And it's like, are you okay with your employer knowing?
Mm-hmm.
And does your employer know you have a mental illness? And it's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big decision to make. And to be honest, I kind of go back to what I said earlier on, which is people knew something wasn't 100% with me from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm good for about first, month or two. After a month or two, I can't carry the persona anymore. I can't keep up the facade. It's just, that's me. So they already know something's off. I'm just helping them by giving a name to it personally.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
And
everybody else is something different.
Right. And the other side of it too is, as much as it stinks, there's a different level of stigma for different mental illnesses.
Absolutely.
Like realistically, if you went in and told an employer you have anxiety, they'd probably go, well, what do you mean? You could describe it. They're probably going to go, we all get nervous. Meh. If you say you have depression, they're probably still going to be in that same ballpark. You say bipolar, then they might go, ooh, they're going to snap on people, kind of a thing, cause it's going to get a, or exactly. And I was just going to say, or if you're like,
that's my favorite,
or if you're, borderline, or if you tell them you have borderline personality disorder, they might go, oh, they're crazy, type of thing. And there could be an extra assessment that you don't deserve. So as much as I hate to say it, I think I can fully understand why some people might be like, hey, look, I'm going to keep that to myself. I
agree. I can understand that too.
Yeah.
I just, from my personal experience doing it both ways, I had to make the right choice for me.
Absolutely.
But I do not judge anyone for their choices because it's a tough choice to make.
Yep.
It really is. And given certain circumstances, I may not make the same choices.
True. Yeah. Different employers might make the difference too. Now I will say this, there are some, like if you're applying for jobs, like if you're going to be a pilot and stuff like that, you're supposed to have, psychological exams and whatnot. And, but so it's like, there are some jobs where I can't encourage people enough to declare their illnesses because, you could put someone else's life in danger. Like those kind of jobs, it's like, please don't keep it to yourself, think of the greater good.
Do the right thing for everyone.
Yeah. Doing an office job, you're probably okay to admit that you have bipolar or depression or whatever, So
exactly.
Maybe not. Don't get me wrong. There's always extremes, but And
I know we're not coming up with any definitive answers for you folks. Unfortunately, it is something that is, has to be made on an individual basis.
Yeah,
exactly.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are personal things, but like in these other episodes where we've talked about it and we've talked about the interviews and dating and all these things, these are things to be aware of. These are things to think of. Mm-hmm. When I went to go see a therapist and I was able to have so many therapy visits on my health insurance, the first thing she said is, and the only way I could get it on my insurance is you have to have a diagnosis.
Yep.
I had to be diagnosed. Otherwise, so if I didn't want to be diagnosed, then I'm paying for it for myself.
Yeah.
Now, why wouldn't you want to be diagnosed? Well, prior to the Affordable Care Act, it's a pre-existing condition now.
Yep.
And if you are on, self-insured, now your insurance goes up a lot because now you've been officially diagnosed. So that was, I had to weigh this. Okay. Are you okay with me diagnosing you as an alcoholic so you can have therapy?
Mm-hmm.
meaning that if I ever went to get insurance on my own, it would be a pre-existing condition.
Right, because it's in your medical files at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the reality is I have worked for, 20, at that time, it was almost 20 years for employers with employer offered health insurance. There is no pre-existing conditions. None of it matters, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm fine with this.
Mm.
If I was an independent contractor or something like that, I'd be weighing that a little differently. But these are these things that you guys have been talking about tonight these are the considerations that we all have to take. We all have to we have to really weigh these things when we finally get to the point of acceptance with whatever disability we have.
And I can't emphasize enough that you really should take the time and weigh this. Don't just go willy-nilly with stuff. Put some thought into how it may affect your life negatively as well as positively. And then, do the old plus minus board if you have to, and then make your decision.
And I've seen recently, I've made some friendships online and in person with people that deal with various, they have physical, mental ailments, whatever you want to call them, disabilities, whatever it is. But the people have lived with them long enough, and there is a strength and a confidence in them. They are ready to say, there are a few things about me that I think you should know.
Yeah.
And they're in a place where they're willing to accept that, that whatever comes back, like you said, are you okay with that troll, that sudden rejection, that whatever?
Or going to dating sites. If you put out there that you have fill in the blank mental illness, or you're a recovering alcoholic, or whatever it is, very, very likely there's going to be people going, I don't need that drama, and just right past you. And that's fine. If they, like when you're doing, it's like, well, if you don't think you can handle that, we're not going to be a match probably anyway. It's probably for the best. But depending on where you're at in your, confidence in your recovery, you may go, wow, this really stinks that nobody blah, 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 or whatever. And it's like, again, it's something to consider, and I know that's why some people don't put it on their profiles. I've seen quite a few that have, like I've seen, like, hey, I have depression, but it's under control and blah, blah. And I was like, that's brutally honest. And I love it. I applaud people that do it. I'll be honest. I'll tell you guys, I don't put it on mine, because I'm too afraid that it'll make a difference.
When I was dating, I would save it for face-to-face.
Yeah, but I was just going to say, but if someone asked me in person, I'll be completely honest with them. Yeah. I'm not hiding it at all. Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell people, and, usually it's not the first thing I lead with.
Yeah.
But, hi, my name's Jen, and I'm bipolar. No.
Yeah. Hi, Jen.
Wait.
Felt like it was a meeting all of a sudden. Yeah, sorry.
But usually how I do is I toss it into conversation.
Hey, we're having some crazy weather today. I'm bipolar. So anyway, I know what you mean.
More gracefully than
that.
I
know. I know. It's just, yeah. I'm just trying to bring some levity,
Brian, one thing that you brought to mind for me is you make a great case for why, even though you are, working on your, on your recovery, whether it's, using medicine or however it is, that you make a good case for still maintaining, professional counseling of some sort, because a lot of the questions that we've brought up have been really about self-esteem and confidence.
Yeah.
And even though you might not need to go and see a therapist for your, particular mental illness, you might want to see a therapist for what it takes to deal with the mental illness.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sure.
There's a really good case for that we talk a lot, Jen, you talk a lot about the work related things, the I don't want to say difficulties, but just the strategies almost for how to deal with coworkers. You know, and we talk a lot about strategies to deal with significant others.
Yeah.
You know, what are tips and tricks like that? That is also a really great thing to do with your therapist or your counselor or whoever it is to work on these strategies of, okay, you know, I'm getting a grip on, you know, my issues. Okay, now how do I interact with the outside world?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's going to help me?
Yep. Well, and there's another side of this too, is we talked various times on here about how when dealing with someone, say, in your support system, when the rules change, you need to tell them the rules have changed and here's kind of what I need. Not, you know, you guys know what I'm talking about, but for those listening, not in a selfish way in such as like, I'm demanding and controlling, but like, hey, like, because most people go into work, they just assume everyone is air quote normal, even though there's going to be whatever. Well, if person A has bipolar and they're open about it and they tell everybody and say, hey, when this happens, this is kind of what I need or whatever. And, you know, you tell them kind of the rules. Most people will probably play within those rules and be courteous and nice about it. And obviously there's probably still going to be, you know, jerks and whatnot, but, I think most people are not going to go out of their way to aggravate someone else's condition, you know, generally. Yeah. So, right. You know,
I would agree.
So that's another thing too, is, you know, again, as we've talked in the past, make sure if you are open about it, make sure that, plus that also helps fight stigma, you know, cause again, like bipolar carries a different level of stigma than some of the others because it gets more toward, like neurological stuff. You know, than some of the others. And, but it's, you know, but if people know, hey, I'm not a threat, basically, there's sometimes like I've told people, you know, depression leads to sometimes, you know, hot-headedness, basically, you know, you anger quickly. So if people around you know that and you can tell them, say, I just need to be left alone for a little bit. You know, like if you can vocalize that, they can then respect it generally because most people will be like, okay, I'll talk to you later, you know, and I think it works better for everybody. And then you have a nice open environment to work in. Again, this is ideal situation. I know not every situation will be ideal, but, I think that's really important. If you're going to be open, kind of be really open, you know, like don't be afraid to tell people and fill in the gaps for them, because honestly, with most people, it's probably they just don't really know anybody else with it. You know, they haven't been around anyone who's bipolar. They don't know what to expect. So, you know, if you kind of let them know, then they may not freak out when you do. You know?
When you get a little goofy, they're a little bit more understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. People have been really great because people at work know. And they've been really wonderful for me. You know, they don't understand the disease, but they understand that how it affects me. Mm-hmm. So when it affects me, they can not excuse things per se, but they can put things in perspective.
Right. And that's what you need. You know, they don't have to understand bipolar, but if they can understand what makes things easier for you or harder for you, that's enough. You know, that's really enough for, you know, for everyone to work and be civil to one another. You know, because then you won't feel like they're going out of their way to aggravate you or, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's always beneficial.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think it's about time for us to start our wrap up. If you would like to continue the conversation, we absolutely adore hearing from you. Thank you again for those that have already reached out. I can't put into words how much we appreciate hearing from you. If you have any ideas or topics for another podcast or for our podcast, let us know. We'd love to share with the audience. And if you want to reach me, you can reach me at Jen's Crazy Life on Twitter. You can also reach the podcast at the Crazy Life Podcast.weebly.com is our website. And our email is the Crazy Life Podcast at outlook.com. And Heno, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter at Ida Heno, and you can find me on Facebook. You can send me a message like Clint did this week, because we mentioned it on the show that I like getting messages, so he sent me one.
Yay, messages.
Thank you, Clint.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, and are we going to talk about T-shirts?
Oh yeah. Well, here let's do the rest of this, and then
I'll throw it to Brian.
Yeah, we'll do that. You can find the show also on Twitter to see when new episodes go up at the Crazy Life Pod. Although we'd hope that you would just subscribe through whatever app that you use. If you're using iTunes, please leave us a review if you got time. And if you're using other ones, if they have a like or a share option, please use those and, help us out so others can find us. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. The other podcast I'm on can be found at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. And as always, I'll point out that show is not safe for work. Shoot, I got lost here. If you want to go read the blogs I already have posted, you can go to stunami.wordpress.com. The link's in the show notes also if you need it. Or contact me and I'll send you the link. Our Facebook group can be found at facebook.com/group/crazylifepodcast. And there's some really great resources under the files page there of NAMI.org, which can help people find therapists that use like a sliding scale, or you can kind of put in what you can afford to pay. And it's a really great organization. As well as like suicide prevention hotline numbers and stuff like that are listed on there. So if you need any of those resources, check that out or contact one of us and we can point you in the right direction. We're also part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. So please go check them out and or check all the other shows out there. And because Mark does a great job trying to promote the podcast and working on that site.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing is, this time it's actually reasonable for me to say we're not doctors, therapists, lawyers, because we talked about legal stuff.
This is true. We are not lawyers.
Right. Or therapists, we're just three people sharing our experiences and thoughts. If you need help, whether it's legal or, medical, please seek out a professional and, don't self-diagnose. Also, please don't mistake or, try to replace therapy with this show. If you feel like you need therapy or a group, please seek that out. It really can make a big difference. And then, of course, if you are feeling suicidal or planning any part of it, whether it's the note, how you would do it, anything like that, please tell someone in your support system, or if it's more dire than that, contact one of the suicide prevention hotline numbers or call 911, tell them you have a mental health emergency, or, just please seek help and please don't act on it. And then also, as I've been saying the last few weeks, try to reach out to somebody this week, somebody that you're friends with, haven't talked to, as I mentioned before. Just tell somebody you appreciate them. Like I said, the world is just spitting so much hate right now. So, throw some love out there for somebody, because, it's just, you never know when that little bit of light can really brighten someone's day up, or, you may save their life just by reaching out. So, if you can, please reach out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, we've got something a little special for you guys, for the audience today. Brian, you probably have the most information on it, but we will be selling T-shirts for charity, correct?
Yes.
That's what I thought. I got it right.
Go on.
Yeah. All right. See you next time. No.
So that being said, can you give us more details?
I'm trying to think of do you know the details, Heno? Because I don't really know them. I can probably find them, but I'll have to take a minute.
Okay, let's just start with this. Sean over at the Pittsburgh Nerd Podcast, Sean and Ian, and they're a really fun geek style podcast. Couple of great guys. They nominated The Crazy Life for the next in line for the charity T-shirt event that is going on amongst podcasters that was started by Stuff That Matters with two guys that don't. And the idea being is that we will have T-shirts for sale with the logo. It'll be $12. $2 covers the shipping, and the other $10 goes to a charity of our choice, which I don't think we've chosen yet.
Oh no, we haven't. Yeah.
Yeah, but we did want to make the announcement. And to thank Sean.
Yes.
And it was on their last podcast, and he had mentioned how he was really honored, and we actually feel the same way.
Definitely.
The idea is that by the end of this year, we're looking at $10,000 going to various charities.
Yeah.
We've had Dark Angels Pretty Freaks, History of Bad Ideas have been involved, and of course Stuff That Matters. And this is a great opportunity. The T-shirts are really nice. They look fantastic. And we'll give you some. We'll probably just give you more details next week because we'll have to come up with a way for you guys to probably just through the email to contact us.
Yeah, we'll have to come up with something,
and we're going to pick the next person. Actually, we already have, but maybe we shouldn't announce it yet.
Yeah, let's do our part of it. Yeah, I was going to say let's do our part about it, and then we'll do that. So
we'll do that maybe for next week.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks to them for nominating or picking us, however you want to word it. That is really cool. We're definitely, honored and happy. So yeah, as Henno said, when we have more details, we'll pass them along. And, like you said, we'll have our charity. We'll announce that next week and probably who we're going to nominate next. And hopefully have more details and such. But we wanted to just put it out there. So, again, like Henno said, the shirts are going to be $12. So if you're listening, if you're interested, if you want to go ahead and kind of send us, not the money, but send us something saying that you're interested, send us an email or something on Twitter and let us know. Or, so we can kind of, that way we can get it going and get them out as quick as we can once it, we get everything. So.
Yeah. If you want the logo and you already have a size, give us some info.
Yeah, because
let us know what you're looking for, and we'll make sure that we get things done.
Yep.
Because that's a tsunami logo there.
Yep.
It is a tsunami logo.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Pretty handsome logo.
It's going to be awesome.
I'm looking forward to having it because I love the logo.
Yeah.
I do too. I am very, very, very.
Because we will get some for us, which is really nice out of the deal, and then the rest of it, everything else goes to charity.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Exactly.
So so there you go. So again, thank you to the Pittsburgh Nerd guys for geez, I can't talk. For picking us.
Absolutely. Well, with that, since I'm having trouble putting my words together and Brian's having trouble putting his words together, and poor Henno being sick all week probably shouldn't be talking all that much, I think it's a good time for us to
like that's ever stopped me.
That's true. He's a trooper.
You know what to do, everybody. Keep breathing. Wiggle those toes. Send the love out to other people in the world, and have a great week.